My name is Robert Macmillan, and this is my oral presentation for the Study Block 3, Positions and Practice, MA Photography at Falmouth University. In this presentation, I will be presenting my past, present and future practice in photography. My initial interest in photography began at the age of 10, when I was given a Polaroid camera for Christmas. My father had been a keen amateur photographer in his early years, and he encouraged me to develop this as a hobby. As a family, we had accumulated a large collection of photographs spanning over several decades, all lyrical subjects in their manner: holidays at the coast, birthdays and Christmas celebrations. This collection of old photographs fascinated me, and the memories which lay behind them. It was curious to see my parents in their early years smiling broadly to the camera. It belied what many of them had been through, or more poignantly, were about to experience. Sontag said, "All photos are memento mori." To take a photograph is to participate in another person's or thing's mortality, vulnerability or mutability. Precisely by slicing out this moment and freezing it, all photographs testify to time's relentless melt. My father, as well as many of my uncles, joined the army in 1939 and served throughout the Second World War. As is common with this generation, they rarely talked about what happened. The only documented evidence I have are a few photographs. This image shows my father with his fellow tank crew in the winter of 1945. The image belies the fact that they had recently visited Dresden shortly after the horrific bombing by Allied forces in February of that year. This image at the end of the war, the inscription on the back of the photo reads, "Montgomery Club, Brussels, July 1945. The look of relief is self-evident on their faces. I would imagine these experiences of the past 6 years will be forever ingrained in their memory. As Barth says, describing a photograph of Napoleon's brother, I am looking at the eyes that looked at the emperor." Looking at my family photo archive, it was clear that most of the images had been taken on holidays, and mainly by the sea. Like many people, I have a fondness for the coast, and that fondness brings back happy memories, but they are also tinged with sadness for those we have lost. This family history, documented by my father on his Kodak folding camera, reminds me of Sontag's quote, "Each still photograph is a privileged moment turned into a slim object that one can keep and look at again." When I visit the coast, it has a calming effect on me. If I need to contemplate, then this is the place. I feel at home. My early photography was influenced mainly by articles in populist photography magazines of the time and by attending workshops. The term pre-visualization would be used with the amateur fraternity happily reproducing their tutor's work. This continuous and somewhat tedious replication is why I ostracised myself from these influences and decided to change my photographic practice. I would start exploring the ideas that photographs were not just about how beautiful a picture was, but rather what feelings an image could emote. This photograph is an example of my early practice. The image of Loch Sunat in Ardnamurchan is a place I would sit, read and contemplate. The photograph describes the tranquility of the scene as a beautiful photograph, and this photograph is what I would expect my peers of the time to appreciate. The aesthetic was influenced by images I'd seen before and what is expected of the picture of a loch at early evening. This image still has an emotional attachment, a reminder of my history, a privileged moment. Sontag said, in photography's early decades, photographs were expected to be idealised images. This is still the aim of most amateur photographers, for a beautiful photograph is a photograph of something beautiful, like a woman, a sunset. This image, taken in Staves, a small Yorkshire fishing village, was a departure from my previous practice. I was fascinated by the flags and the angle they were positioned at. I wonder if I'd made a subliminal connection between this and Rothenthal's picture at Iwo Jima. The concept of conveying memories into my images somehow interested me, and it was something I would work towards. I pursued a career in architecture, attaining an honours degree in 1992. This degree proved significant in many aspects of my design capability. It taught me to test theories and push boundaries and to think beyond the norm. I was attracted to the concept of minimalism, whether it be architectural plans, artwork or a photograph, and is something I have experimented with. A master minimalist is Tado Ando, a self-taught architect and skilled practitioner. He employs uncomplicated but intelligently designed spaces which evoke emotion to the user. Ando said, "You can't really say what is beautiful about a place, but the image of the place will remain vividly with you. People tend not to use the word beauty because it is not intellectual, but there has to be an overlap between beauty and intellect." I have always found the coast to be a means of reflection, relaxation, and sometimes solace. The memories I hold are an important link to my past. This concept of memory in photography is something I wish to explore in my future work. My current practice has been using the technique of blurring the images to minimise detail, either by utilising slow shutter speeds or intentional camera movement. I think this technique has to be used very carefully, however, or the outcome can be cliched. An influencer of this technique is the photographer Alexei Titarenko, and particularly his work Shadow Images, taken in his home city of St. Petersburg during the Soviet collapse. He describes his work as creating a metaphor. Using a film camera with this technique, you don't know what's going to happen, which is part of the surprise. Recently I've been working mostly on Scotland's east coast around the River Tay. The Inner Tay, as it is designated, consists of a 20-mile stretch of salt marsh and reed beds. The reed beds are ancient and a site of special scientific interest. In the following images, my goal was to convey the sense of memory in this area. To capture the movement, sound and tranquility of the place, I wanted the photographs to be ambiguous and thought-provoking. This image is of a jetty further along the river. The jetty is no longer used and the stern is crumbling. Semi-submerged boats lay at the water's edge, the remains of its past. This photograph is intended to convey an ethereal shadow image reflecting its narrative, memory and history. My future work will be exploring the concept of memory in photography. I aim to concentrate on coastal towns in the Yorkshire region which hold special memories from my childhood. I want to link these memories with photographs already within the archive. My future study, amongst others, will include the Turner Contemporary Exhibition and publication Seaside Photographed and Mark Power's project, The Shipping Forecast. I have chosen to use film for this project as I think it may better suit the subject. Thank you for listening, and this is the end of my oral presentation.